Today I want to talk about an album that had 4 singles charting on Billboard, with 2 songs reaching the top 10 of the Hot 100. Lead single, Best of Times, went to number 3 in the Billboard Hot 100. Too Much Time on My Hands went to number 9 on the Billboard Hot 100. Nothing Ever Goes as Planned went to number 54 on the US Pop chart. And Rockin' in Paradise went to number 8 on the Top Rock Track chart. It was a concept album about a fictional theater in Chicago called Paradise Theater, from its opening in 1928 to its closing in 1956, followed by its demolition. It was a metaphor for America's changing times from the late 70s into the 1980s. Today I want to talk about Paradise Theater by Styx. It was released on January 16th, 1981 through A&M Records. The album bridges the gap between the progressive rock of the 70s and the theatrical pop of the 80s. It's an album that continues the path they were on. The band has always been evolving. So in today's video, I want to talk about the album. I have the vinyl here. I bought it at a Mexico City street fair, so it might be a little different than the American version. I'm going to show it a little later on, and I'm also going to talk about how they changed their sound and the songs and how each member contributed to the album. So with that being said, let's talk more about Paradise Theater. At this point in their career, they were sounding a little different than before. In the 70s, they had albums like Serpent is Rising and Equinox, but those were prog albums. The songs were very complex, the lyrics were hard to understand, and there were lots of instrumental passages. But now, with this album, songs were more radio-friendly and the sound was more streamlined, and therefore, they may have alienated some fans, but they gained many others. I guess if you were a Styx fan in the 70s, you may have been disappointed by this album, as it didn't have those long 10-minute long songs with those big Moog synthesizer solos or odd time signatures. It was catchy rock music. But here's the thing. Was it just catchy radio-friendly rock music, or is there more going on? I think their biggest challenge was making an album that was accessible and radio-friendly, but at the same time, still trying to have some depth and musicality, as these guys were expert musicians. On the surface, the album sounds like a polished hard rock album. You had songs like Too Much Time on My Hands, The Best of Times. They were catchy, memorable songs filled with hooks, but then there were songs that still had some hints of their prog rock sound. So I'll be delving into that in a moment, but before I go any further, I want to take a look at the vinyl, because I know a lot of you are here for that. Now it's time to take a look at the vinyl records. So you can see it has the Styx Paradise Theater, showing the Paradise Theater as if it was opening. So this is their premiere. And then this is a gatefold, but it flips the other way. I'll show you that in a second. But I want to show you the back cover, because this is the theater in 1958, supposedly, when they are closing the theater, and you can see it, all that, and you can see the songs over here in English. And since I bought this in Mexico, the songs here are in Spanish here, so you can see that like that. And as I said before, the gatefold opens like an up and down fashion, so it shows the members here, shows like a little newspaper clipping. Remember, this is a concept album. And then here's the song titles, and then here they show them in English again. And here are the members. And on this part, you can see the lyrics to the song, which is cool because not every vinyl album had lyrics. Okay, here's the record. I know there are some versions that have this like holographic image on the vinyl, but this one doesn't have it. I guess it's the one that was printed in Mexico. As you can see on the sticker, the songs are in Spanish. Well, actually, the songs are bilingual, and it just has that sticker. And the other side is the same thing, basically showing the songs and the vinyl. So that's that. So before I showed you the vinyl record, I was talking about how this was a commercial album, but it still had some elements of prog rock. So let's explore that now. I think there were a few songs that were reminiscent of their early days. 2 examples are the songs AD 1928 and AD 1858. They consisted of piano melodies, and they were intros and a reprise of the hit song The Best of Times. And they ended the album with a short instrumental called State Street Sadie, being this vaudeville piano melody. There were tracks that, they sounded like tracks that could be on a typical prog rock album by a band like Yes or Genesis, But there were other great songs like Snowblind. That song had lots of layers, so it might seem like an arena rock song, but it still had some progginess to it. Even the opening line, he sings "Mirror, Mirror on the Wall." It makes it sound like a prog rock song. The song was about cocaine addiction and featured vocals by both James Young and Tommy Shaw. Now you may be wondering why they made this change. On the one hand, they wanted to make an artistic statement by showing the world how they could evolve, but on the other hand, they did what every other band was doing. They were changing with the times, as progressive rock wasn't as popular as it was before. Even bands like Genesis and Yes were changing their sound in the early 80s. Paradise Theater may not be a very complex album, but it's filled with some catchy songs and there's lots of storytelling within the lyrics. I mentioned before that some people did not like the new sound. Many people preferred the old Styx. That band had these long prog rock compositions, and they wrote about fantasy and sci-fi. They were making albums similar to the other prog bands like Rush or Kansas. Some people prefer the previous albums, maybe the experimental Pieces of Eight or the fantasy-oriented Crystal Ball, but Paradise Theater is an album that you have to listen to a few times, because the more you listen, the more you hear the virtuosity of the musicians. Which is my next point, the fact that this band has some really great musicians and songwriters. The album still had everything that people loved about Styx. It had the guitar solos of Tommy Shaw, the keyboards of Dennis DeYoung, the guitar riffs of James Young. So in other words, the band was evolving and the album was just packaged differently. But they were still the same band. Let's take a look at how some of the members in the band made this a great album. They were able to make music that sounded like arena rock, but was also very versatile and technical. First, let's talk about vocalist and keyboardist Dennis DeYoung. He was probably the one responsible for taking the band in more of a theatrical direction. He was most known for his vocals, but let's talk about his keyboard playing. He plays piano on the hit single, The Best of Times. The song might sound like a typical rock ballad of the 80s, but the song actually has some classical music influence in the piano playing. Then there was the very 80s sounding Too Much Time on My Hands, where his keyboards accompany the guitar and bass riffs. Other than his keyboards, he delivers a great vocal performance. He sang lead vocals on about half of the songs on the album. One of his best vocal performances is on the song The Best of Times, which is a very theatrical sounding song. He could do both the operatic vocals as well as rock vocals. He could sing ballads, show tunes, and rockers. He was a very versatile vocalist. Then there was Tommy Shaw. He was the guitarist, but he also was one of the main songwriters, and he sang lead on many songs. Probably the best Tommy Shaw song on the album is Too Much Time on My Hands. It was another song that was catchy, but also had lots of complexity in the composition. He can also deliver some great vocals. He delivers a great performance on the song She Cares, which has some awesome lead guitar playing as well, and some saxophone solos which were played by somebody else. Tommy Shaw was also able to do co-lead vocals as he does on the song Snowblind. There's also James Young. He brought in some harder rock influences as well as some theatrical elements as well. His best song is probably Snowblind, where he does co-lead with Tommy Shaw. He also does lead vocals and lead guitar on the track Halfpenny Twopenny, which is one of his best tracks. There are two more people in the band who don't get a lot of attention, but they are very important to the band's sound. They are Chuck Panoso, who plays bass, and John Panoso, who plays drums. Chuck's bass lines are melodic when they need to be. One of the best songs is Nothing Ever Goes as Planned, a song that has elements of groove and funk. Then the drumming of John Panoso, who's a very tight and precise drummer. Some of his best moments are his drum fills on the song Rockin' in Paradise. They both form this tight rhythm section where they can keep up with the shifting time signatures, key change, and genre changes. One of the most virtuosic aspects of Paradise Theater is how all the parts fit together. Styx were masters of studio layering, and this album shows how the band was able to create these tight arrangements. The guitars are loud when they need to be, but they can also take a back seat when needed. The keyboards don't overpower the songs, they just provide textures to the songs. Not only that, but the band has some of the best vocal harmonies of that time. I would even say they could rival the vocal harmonies of a band like Queen. So in short, Paradise Theater really shows off the band's songwriting and skills. This may have been a hit album that led to them playing packed stadiums, but beneath the theatricality, they are some great musicians. So in conclusion, Styx didn't abandon their roots, they transformed them. And in doing so, they made Paradise Theater not only one of their most successful albums, but one of their most artistically balanced. So if you like this video, please give this video a like and subscribe. I do physical media content on this channel, and check out this video here. It's one of my previous ones. I'll let you watch that one next. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.